Okay, this should be a review of solving trig equations with non-calculator and calculator. You should be in groups, working together. It'll pause after each question so you guys can work together, get the answer, and then the following will be me answering the question. So realize once you've seen this once, you can skip around and use it as notes. Let's get started. First thing, make sure you know how to draw those special right triangles. Here we go here. Make sure we got pi fourths wherever you have 45 degrees, pi sixths wherever you have 30 degrees, pi thirds whenever you have 60 degrees. So let's get started. First thing, in your group with no calculator, go from 0 to 2 pi and solve this equation. Give you a little time. All right, so if we're going 2 cosine plus square root of 2, I can end up getting 2 cosine of x equals negative square root of 2. Cosine of x equals negative root 2 over 2. One of the things I need to remind you is that anytime you see square root of 2 over 2, that's the same thing as 1 over root 2. So, since we have a negative sign here, we know that cosine is negative over here, and since we have this range, that's one time around the circle. Okay? Therefore, our answer is going to have to be in this quadrant and this quadrant, which means cosine of x when it equals root 2 over 2 is pi fourths, but since it's here, I end up with 3 pi fourths. And then since it's here, 5 pi fourths. So that's going to be x. Okay, next one. Try solving this one. Okay, since we're going from 0 to pi, that means all my answers have to be from here to here, and that's it. Therefore, I first start factoring out a cosine of x, which leaves me a cosine of x minus 1 inside equaling 0. Solve it as two different equations. When does cosine of x equal 0? And when does cosine of x minus 1 equal 0? Well, cosine of x equals 0 at pi halves. It actually also equals, so up here, pi halves, it also equals at 3 pi halves, but that's outside of our domain. If I go cosine of x equals 1, well, the only spot it equals is 0. It actually equals at 2 pi 2, but once again, out of my range. So x equals 0. There's the two solutions you should end up with. Okay, next one. Solving this one. Give you a little time. Try to solve this. Now, since my range goes from pi to negative pi, it can be anywhere in that circle, but I have to go in those two directions. So let's start off by factoring cosine of x. I get tangent of x. Oh, I messed up real quick. First thing I want to do is get everything over to one side. Tangent of x, cosine of x, minus cosine of x equals 0. Factor out a cosine of x. Got to hold the spot, equals 0. So I got to figure out when cosine of x equals 0. I got to figure out when tangent of x minus 1 equals 0. So let's start on the left. Cosine of x, when does that equal 0? Well, it equals here, and it equals here. So at pi halves, and remember I have to go in this direction, so that one works. So when x equals pi halves, or if I go the other direction, when x equals negative pi halves. So there's our two solutions here. When does tangent of x equal 1? Well, it's going to be positive over here, so tangent of x equals 1 there. In other words, when x equals pi fourths. And I forgot to put this up, but the reason it's pi fourths is tangent of pi fourths equals 1 over 1. Okay? Also, tangent's positive over here. Well, if this is pi fourths, then to get to that one, I got to go negative 3 pi fourths. Okay? And then try this one out. With a calculator, try this one out. All right. So, trying to solve this with a calculator, what we have to notice is this here. Our range is from negative pi to 0. This is huge. And we want to make sure our mode is in radians. So, if I bring up the calculator, and let's go to the front screen. Second, quit. Oh, calculator's frozen again. Okay, mode works this time. If you go down, you make sure that radians is highlighted. You can hit enter if you want to on that one. Then you can get out of there. So for this first equation, 7 sine x cosine negative x equals negative 3. I go to y equals, I've already put it in, 7 sine x cosine x for y1, negative x, and realize I put a negative there. And for y2, I put negative 3. Okay? Then I make sure my window goes from wherever they told me, from negative pi to 0. So my x goes from negative pi to 0. Okay? Then I can graph this out. There's a first graph. Negative 3 goes flying by. I go second trace, which is the calculate button. I go intersect. I'll go enter, enter, enter. So my first one is negative 1.06. I'm going to go 2 decimals on this one. Negative 1.06. The other one, go back to intersect, 5. Got to get closer to the other intersection point. So I scroll over. That's close enough. Enter, enter, enter. Negative 5 or negative 0.51. So, in other words, when we actually do it on the calculator and you figure out the solution, you got a graph that comes across here. This was at negative 1.06. This one was at negative 0.51. There's your 2 answers for that one. Okay, next one. Try this with a calculator. Okay, solution to this one. First thing I want to make sure is that you understand that anytime I write sine squared x, this is the same thing as sine x, all squared. Okay, now back to our calculator. Go y equals, unhighlight that. Now the next two, highlight. Already typed that in. Window, I got to go from negative 2 to 2. So negative 2, enter 2. Graph on that. Now, tough for me to see. Well, not too tough. So I end up with this graph here. I got to find my 2 intersections on this. Second, calculate intersect. Enter, enter, enter. Let's see which one pops up. So I got 0.74. Second, calculate intersect. I got to get closer to the other intersection. Enter, enter, enter. Negative 0.85. So that ends up being my solution to that one. So my graph, which roughly looked like this with another one coming across. I think I messed this up. Oh well. Ends up equaling x equaling negative 0.85 and 0.74. Okay, so you can use this as a review. Hopefully you guys were figuring this out, and I will see you guys